Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to take two of the February edition of East Porter County's Tech Connect. Take one involved learning what happens when you forget to press the unmute button on your microphone. So we apologize for that, and hopefully you were able to make the switch over here to the new channel. We have a full agenda today. We're going to start off by talking about Google account security. For the last several episodes, I've picked different security topics that impact you hopefully both at home as well as within the district, and we've tried to address those. Today we're going to talk about steps that you can take as well as steps that the district takes to secure Google accounts. Then Diana is going to step in. She's going to talk more about the newly introduced Scenes in GoGuardian, which is a fantastic new feature that's being added to the GoGuardian for Teachers product. And we will conclude with student-focused technology integration. Just a reminder that if you are tuned in live with us, you can always ask questions in the chat window, which should be located directly to the right of the video window. We will be answering those questions in real time, so you can do it while we're talking about a particular category, or we will have an open Q&A time at the end. All right, so starting off, Google security. When we rolled out one-to-one to the 9th through 12th graders as well as the 6th through 8th graders, we showed kind of a humorous little video that showed users throwing the Chromebook into the river and not losing any of their files. And that's really true with Google. The power is not in the device, but the power is in the account. And so when we talk about making sure that Google is secure, we don't want to focus on the Chromebook or on the Chrome browser necessarily, but we want to focus on the security of your Google account, because that's really the gateway for all Google services. So if last week's weather showed us anything, it's that spring is right around the corner. And as we typically do with our houses and other things, spring cleaning, we are recommending that you do spring cleaning to the apps and the extensions within your Chromebook. So there's a couple different places that we're going to review today where we want to focus on cleaning up those apps, extensions, and also sites that we've granted permissions. So the first is the apps and extensions within your Chromebook itself. And you can access these by going to Settings from within the Chrome browser, More Tools, and then choosing the Extensions option. And there's a couple things that you really want to concern yourself with. Obviously, if you have apps that you're no longer using, you want to either deactivate or completely remove those. But the biggest issue that we're seeing these days is with the rights that apps are asking to be granted. And you can review that at any time by choosing the Details option. And the details are just going to show you the permissions that the particular app needs to run. And so everything that we talk about has to be within the appropriate context. So some apps genuinely will require what Google would label as full access in order to run. So think about the Google Chrome app itself, for instance. In order to be able to sync your bookmarks, to sync your history, it needs full access to your Google account. But should you grant a calculator app, for instance, full access to your Google account, that's something to think about. And if you're not comfortable with that, you can always deactivate or disable that particular application. And it's also important to check this area periodically. I've attached a little image here at the bottom where we see the settings box and it's turned orange. And what that indicates is that there's an app or extension that's requiring a permissions update in order to continue functioning. So a lot of times we'll see that and we'll click on that extension's permissions update and we'll accept it blindly without reading that. So those are changing all the time. So this is an area of the program that you want to make sure to check maybe every month or so and just make sure you're still okay with the permissions that you've been granting to a particular extension. The second, and this is one that you might be less familiar with, is verifying Google account permissions. So if you navigate in your browser to myaccount.google.com/permissions, what you will get is a list of all sites and apps that you've granted access to your Google account. And so this could be more than just what extensions have access to. This could feature things like add-ons that you've added into Google Drive, for instance. So just as an example, I use an inventory add-on in Google Sheets. It helps me keep track of Chromebook inventory. In order to allow that to interact with my Drive, I've had to give that particular add-on different rights within my Google account. So something like that would be listed there. Sites that you've used sign in through Google with. You know, if you go to a site and rather than create a new account, it allows you to sign in with your Google account, you're granting that site a certain level of rights. And so you want to go through here and just check it out. See what you've given access to your Google account. And again, it will give you the details of exactly what that site's asking for. And then that's up to you to make that decision on whether or not you want to continue allowing that site to have those rights. And if you do not, simply press the remove button underneath that particular service. One thing I would caution against, however, there will be, by default, about 5 or 6 different Google services listed. Do not remove any of those Google services, because essentially calamity will ensue, especially the Google Chrome. The Google Chrome listing, which says it requires full account access, that's allowing your bookmark syncing, your history syncing, your app and extension syncing. So it's very important that that one stays intact. But look for third-party services that you might not be comfortable with granting that level of rights. And you know, you can always go ahead and remove them. Worst case scenario, you add them back. So the first 2 topics we talked about are end user responses to Google security. This third topic is, what is eastPorter doing to assist in the protection of your Google account? We've recently purchased a software called CloudLock, and what CloudLock does is protect all staff and secondary student Google accounts. And it does this through a couple different methods. First off, it's looking for apps and extensions on your account requiring excessive permissions. It has a database similar to how antivirus software would keep definitions of malware or of viruses. And it uses a rating system and lets us know if a user has installed an app or an extension that might possibly require more permissions than it really needs to do its job. So it's sending reports on that. The second is the location of your account sign-in, specifically if you're signing in outside the United States. So just as an example, if you happen to go on vacation and you do log in from another country, we will probably get a report about that, and then we'll typically follow up with an email to verify that that is a genuine sign-in to your account. Another thing that the system's looking for as far as the location is if there is 2 sign-ins in a duration of time that would be physically impossible. So for instance, you sign in from Couts, Indiana, and 5 minutes later you sign in from Great Britain. Obviously you can't travel to Great Britain within 5 minutes, so it will flag that and send us a report. Next option is inappropriate share level of documents within Google Drive. And this is a fantastic feature that really relates to documents such as IEPs, documents that contain personally identifiable information. So essentially what CloudLock is doing is looking for documents within your Google Drive that might have IEP style information, might have combinations of PII like student name, address, telephone number, and then essentially it evaluates the share level of those documents. So if it's not shared, it's not going to flag it. If it's shared with a couple of individuals, it's not going to flag it. But what it will flag is if you choose a public share level or perhaps a district-wide share level or a district-wide with link. Basically, share levels that can open up that document outside of the scope that it really should be shared with. So this is something that we've just recently adopted here within the last month or so, and you can kind of think of it in the sense of how your bank monitors your bank account in the background. You don't always know or have visibility what's going on, but you do get those emails from time to time when your bank can say, hey, you know, did you really log in? Did you really log into your account from this location? CloudLock works in a very similar fashion. It's designed to be unobtrusive, but it is providing an additional and a very high level of security. So we'll have more information to come about this in the coming months as we fully roll this out. But we just wanted to let everyone know that this is a step that we are taking to just further enhance the security of your account.
Hi guys, today I'm going to start off talking about scenes in GoGuardian, and much of what I'm going to speak about when it comes to scenes for GoGuardian teacher account has to do with the questions I've been getting about scenes. And I know that only roughly half of us even have access to scenes But however, a lot of people that have access to Scenes have been excited about experimenting with and trying the new feature. So I just want to address a few things in relation to that. Please remember that Scenes, it is in beta testing. So that's the phase of testing that involves some of the product users to test the product out, to give feedback, and to just basically experiment with it. So if you do have access to Scenes, please feel free to try it if you want to. If you do have access to Scenes on your GoGuardian account, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to start using it now. I'll warn you, it's not going to work perfectly right now. You have to remember that this is in beta testing. So use it with caution, but if you're excited about it and want to try it out, the more that we experiment with it, the better it will be when everyone has access to Scenes on their teacher account. And we also just want to make sure you know that the teachers that do have access to Scenes in GoGuardian, we did not choose these teachers. That was completely at random by GoGuardian. We have no local control over who has access to Scenes right now. I will recommend, if you have Scenes in your account and you're curious to get started with it, if you access the training modules that we've used in the past for GoGuardian at training.goguardian.com, most of us have gone through that training 100%, but GoGuardian has recently added a Scenes module so that you can go through and figure all the different features out and the different components of Scenes, so that when you are experimenting, you can do that with some confidence. Right now, several teachers throughout the district have been experimenting with Scenes, and one of the conversations that I had, someone made a suggestion that we should work together to kind of create some examples of what Scenes might look like. So if you want a scene for a test environment, or you want to limit access to YouTube or Google Play, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, we can build together some shared examples of that, so that we can simply copy and paste those different websites and plop them into the Scenes that we're building, modify so that it works for your classroom from there, just to get everybody started. Because we want to make sure that we maintain what the purpose of Scenes is, and that purpose is to provide every single teacher with the local control of filtering while a class is in session in your classroom. That way you can consider your students and the environment and the specific activity that you have your students working on, not to mention behavior issues or classroom management in general, so that you can tailor that to your classroom. So just keep in mind that when we start sharing this stuff out, they are merely suggestions, and ultimately you should make those decisions for your classroom as to what your students can and cannot access. I also feel like I have to say this as an ed tech person, but we have to remember that technology is never going to solve human issues. So we have to remember that GoGuardian is simply one of those tools that we have in our classroom management toolbox. And I would recommend not looking at GoGuardian as our first defense against any classroom management issues we might have. I've said a lot of these things before, but I just want to kind of circle back around and talk about some of the things that we need to make sure that we are doing when we use GoGuardian. So first, we have to make sure that we're all creating a different GoGuardian class for every period in the day. And I'll say that this is most easily done through that integration with Google Classroom. So if you're using Google Classroom, GoGuardian will sync up with those Google Classroom classes, so that you don't have to go through an additional process to get your students enrolled in GoGuardian. There are some situations, however, that might not work. For example, SRT or SRP, our students are moving around depending on how you have that resource time structured in your building. So what I've seen done in some of our middle school classrooms is one teacher will create a large classroom of students for SRT, and they'll put everybody in there. And then instead of every teacher doing that, that one teacher that created the big classroom will then add co-teachers to the class, so that we're all sharing one giant classroom and we don't have students in multiple sessions at the same time, and kids can move around, and that way the teachers, we don't have to worry about whether or not we can monitor students because we'll have access. So, I can talk about more about that on an individual basis if you have a situation where you need to be a little bit more creative with your GoGuardian classrooms. And I'll talk in a couple minutes about the different co-teacher options that GoGuardian gives us. The other thing I'll say is that if we're scheduling GoGuardian sessions in advance, we have to make sure that we're being accurate with the times. GoGuardian does allow us to be accurate with our Wednesday start times. So take a look at how you have that set up and just make sure we're being accurate, because again, what we're trying to avoid is having students in multiple GoGuardian sessions at once. And it's even more important that we think about that as we get scenes. So my suggestion for using GoGuardian is to schedule those sessions to happen automatically every day. I think this is best practice. That way, when you want to monitor your students actively, you can access those sessions that are already in progress, but sometimes that doesn't make sense in your classroom. You know, when I work with teachers on GoGuardian, we have a lot of conversations about the time, of course, and then also how unrealistic it might be to be able to instruct and work with your students while monitoring, you know, quote unquote, policing what our kids are doing on their Chromebooks. And I'd argue, you know, that we never really want to use the tool that way anyway. And as we use scenes, become more comfortable with it, and the product is fully rolled out, that becomes less of a problem. And so what I'm saying is, if, you know, at the very minimum, if we're all being consistent and using GoGuardian, all that has to really look like to save you time is to schedule sessions in advance and then take a look at those summary emails that you get automatically, look at the data really quickly, address any problems that you might see. But again, that allows for consistent use without you having to actively monitor 100% of the time. I got a few questions about the different co-teacher options in GoGuardian, so I wanted to address that really quickly. GoGuardian gives us 3 options. So when you are the owner, if you create a GoGuardian classroom, you can invite other teachers in the district to either also be an owner of your classroom, which means they can pretty much do everything you can do. You can invite other teachers to be a teacher in the classroom. They can you know, worry about who's in the class, start sessions, view the sessions, archive, that sort of thing. And then the last one is a helper. And if you invite a teacher to be a helper in your classroom, all they can do is view the sessions. And GoGuardian suggests maintaining sole ownership of your GoGuardian classrooms. And then if you are doing any team teaching or trying that SRT setup, like I mentioned before, you can invite other teachers to be teachers. And I think that's probably the safest bet to avoid any human error with that. If you have any other questions about GoGuardian, if you want to experiment with scenes with a little bit of support in your classroom, I'm happy to do that. So just reach out to me via email. Okay, the next topic I'm talking about is active versus passive technology use. And when I say this, I'm speaking to student technology use. A lot of the current conversations in ed tech right now are challenging us to be true to that thoughtful tech integration. And we're prompted to ask ourselves how our students are using technology in the classrooms and whether that use is active learning or passive learning. So long before I came here, I know that we rolled out this initiative saying that technology is just another tool in our toolbox. And we've been really careful to be sure that our goals are focused on student learning objectives, and that drives everything that we do when we plan for our classrooms and make decisions for the district with technology. So we also talk a lot about choosing the right tool for the job and considering student safety and a number of other factors. However, we need to circle back around and take a look at what the job is. So we know what the right tool for the job is, but what's the job? And what I mean is, what are we asking our students to do? So this takes us completely beyond tech use itself, and it focuses on the whole point for going one-to-one and having that initiative and using digital materials and just using ed tech in general. The point is to transform teaching and transform learning in our classrooms. And you know, I'm going to use a bunch of buzzwords here, but it also challenges us to move beyond engagement. When ed tech was, you know, first a thing, it was all about engaging students, and now we're moving past that to empowerment. We have to look at our teaching methods and ask if the teaching methods themselves are allowing students to learn actively or passively, and then from there, we can integrate technology into our teaching and learning methods, because again, that student learning objective is what matters more than anything. So we use SAMR as our tech integration framework, and we have to continually come back around to this. And I'll admit that I feel like I need to talk about this even more and think about this even more. It's easy to let the tech take over that focus sometimes. We all feel that pressure to be creative and innovative, and I know I'm definitely not immune to that. So we have to be sure that our why stays true to itself. And if we take a close look at SAMR and we move through the different levels, we see that the different levels encourage, as we move up the ladder, if you will, it encourages that active tech use. And just look at the word choice itself. As we move up into transformation and transforming the way that we're teaching and learning in our classrooms, we'll see the word task used in conjunction with that transformational teaching and learning. And we know that the goal isn't always to be in the redefinition stage, but you'll notice that you don't see the word task until we move beyond enhancement. In SAMR, the substitution and the augmentation, that enhancement, the word choice is more about the technology and what the technology is doing for us. And then later, when we move on to modification and redefinition, then we start talking about the tasks that our students are doing. I also like to think about the 4 C's in conjunction with SAMR. I think these two frameworks together are a really powerful yet simple way to help us stay true to our why in using tech in the classroom. If we're giving our students opportunities to communicate and think critically, collaborate, and create in a number of different ways, then we know that we're doing it right. So I encourage all of us to talk more about active versus passive technology use. That's all I've got. So let's take a look at our questions.
We've got a couple of questions that have popped up throughout that we've been able to answer in the chat window, but if you have anything else at this time, now would be the time to put it.
Yeah, we've asked GoGuardian a lot about when we'll see that rollout, and unfortunately they haven't been able to give us a date yet. But believe me, we talk to GoGuardian on a daily basis, if not several times a day, because I want that information for you guys as well.
All right, if there's nothing else, we thank you for attending today. And then as always, if you ever have any follow-up questions, please feel free to shoot either one of us an email, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. We'll have the information for the March edition of Tech Connect within the next couple weeks. We thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.